Hey everybody, Ken Sat Kunum, Dan DeFay, North Star Technology Group. Dan, what's going on today? What do you got happening in the world of cybersecurity?
Yeah, just wanted to provide a briefing of what we're seeing out there, especially want to focus on our law firm friends that are out there. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this and get started. Just a recap, Ken and I merged our companies together back in November of last year. We help law firms and companies throughout the country. We have over 32 employees now, and we're in 14 different states. And we look forward to showing you what we're seeing out there now and having the opportunity to help you navigate these difficult times with cybersecurity. So I always like to start out with a couple of definitions that a lot of people probably hear in the news. They probably hear the word breach, they hear the word compromise, but a lot of times people don't really understand what those terms actually mean. So, Ken, what do you know about the difference between a breach and a compromise?
I know nothing about what a breach and a compromise is. What is the difference, Dan?
Well, a compromise is where the attacker actually gets into your system, and a lot of times they'll stay there. That they haven't done any damage, but they've basically maintained access, unauthorized access. And so the breach is what their ultimate goal is. And so they'll usually compromise your systems for a couple of weeks or months, and then they inflict damage, and that is what the breach is. So the damage could be ransomware, could be some kind of data theft. And so what a lot of people don't understand is that there's a huge criminal element out there. Cybercrime is the fastest growing industry in the world right now. It's growing faster than the drug trade. And that is going to be most likely your largest threat to your firm, other than maybe your employees. So a lot of law firms, they don't really think that they're targets because they think that they're too small, and nothing could be further from the truth. A small law firm is a prime target, mainly not because they want the information that the law firms have, but they understand the trust relationship between the law firm and the law firm's clients. So they want to attack that firm, get basically get possession of the files that belong to the client and use that as extortion. So even though those files may not really mean anything to the attacker, they know that those files mean a lot to you. So they're going to go after them, and they're going to try to steal those files, and then they're going to try and extort a ransom out of you. And then the way this has evolved in an even worse way is that once they have obtained those files, they'll attempt to go after your clients as well. And that's where the lawsuits can really start to pile up, if you don't do something and do the right things to protect your firm. So right now, every 39 seconds, there's a cyber attack happening. Did you know that, Ken?
I've heard that. It's crazy to think that this is happening so frequently, and it's scary.
Yeah. And, a lot of people may not know this, but there's criminal gangs that they now make money just by equipping criminals with the tools that they need to run these kind of ransomware scams and other types of cyber incidents. It's just crazy right now. The ransomware as a service, what they do there is they basically take criminals who don't really know a whole lot about computers or this type of illegal activity, and they give them all the tools that they need to actually deploy ransomware and infect systems and try to get money from these victims. This is so evolved now that ransomware as a service has their own hotline. They have their own customer service. They have their own marketing, and criminals pay a lot of money to these gangs to have these kind of tools, and they're making a lot of money, and that's why this is thriving. Um, we're also still seeing that most of these criminal organizations are focused in Eastern Europe, primarily in Russia, and it's really just a monetary problem for them, and that's why so many of them go into cybercrime, because it's so fruitful for them. $11,000 is the average annual salary in Russia, and just one successful hack can be life changing for these guys.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that, and I'm not glorifying hacking at all, but that, today you really, these people do not need a lot of skill to be able to do this. It literally is its own economy now, right? With its own support, its own software, its own, help desk.
Yep.
Back in the old days, you actually had to know how to be a programmer and write your own code and do all this yourself. And so this is opening this type of crime to so many more people now.
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of people think that, well, hey, I use the cloud now, so I'm safe. And the criminals understand this also. So 82% of the attacks happen in the cloud, because that's where the world has moved to, especially since COVID. And a lot of people think, oh, I've got everything in Microsoft or Google, and they think that Microsoft or Google is responsible for their data, and they're actually not. Whenever you sign up for these services, that they have a responsibility matrix that states that the customer is responsible for the backup and the security of the data. Microsoft and Google just provide the vehicle to store it. And so that's the Microsoft responsibility matrix. And here's the similar one for Google Workspace. Also, we do a lot of risk assessments on law firms, and we are seeing a lot of failed login attempts. This is an example of a risk assessment we did for a small firm a few months ago. And in a 90-day period, there were over 22,000 failed logins. And what this map represents is that each one of these red dots you see here, that's where they had the correct username or email address when they were trying to log into Microsoft 365, but they just didn't have the correct password. So when you are in the cloud, just be aware that the criminals can access things as well, and they're trying to do that every single day. The other thing that we're seeing is that a lot of people have insurance, cyber insurance, which we highly recommend. But when they do get the cyber insurance, they're not really telling the truth when they're filling out these forms. And then these forms and applications are getting longer and longer, because so many cyber insurance carriers have lost money. So they want to make sure that if they're going to give you a policy, that you're actually doing some things that are going to reduce the risk of filing a claim. So there's a checklist now. Here's an example of one of the checklists that we have with one of our insurance partners, Coalition. And these 13 controls are part of what we do to make sure that our clients stay safe. And so the thing that I want to point out on this is what we call Boom. Boom is basically a cyber event that happens. And so on the left side of Boom, that's where North Star is. That's where we try to minimize all your risk. We try to do everything we can to make sure that no event happens. And then cyber insurance is on the right of Boom, so that if something does get through, you've got a backstop there with insurance to help pay any claims or make things right financially for you. So we've been through a lot of uh, incidents with different prospects, and we help them recover from security events. And I can tell you, the one thing that nobody ever plans for is the amount of downtime that they're going to be facing. Ken, you've seen this just as much as I have. You
Yeah.
know, you're usually talking at least a minimum of a week, if not longer, before you can actually log into your systems and continue working.
Yeah, and the big reason for that is the forensics time. So when an event happens, right, Dan talks about compromise that leads to a breach where an actual event occurs, whether it's ransomware or data theft. The very next step is part of an incident response process, which I think Dan will be talking about. But that involves a forensics investigation to determine what happened. And the reason why that's important is because that will determine where you restore back to, right? So you don't want to like recover files that are still infected. And so the forensics process is important, but that takes a lot of time.
Yep. And whenever we do our assessments, we always find a lot of these same common problems, right? Email security is not properly configured, multi-factor is not set up. Usually the backups haven't been checked. And so, unless you have somebody responsible for checking all these things all the time, usually something's going to get missed.
Mhm.
And so, what the other problem that we also see is that there's a lot of reliance on legacy security. Ken and I jokingly call this the Bon Jovi security plan, because whenever somebody has antivirus and firewall, basically they're just living on a prayer. These technologies are still necessary. Antivirus and firewall are two very important and necessary layers, but there's several more layers of security that need to be in place now. Having just an antivirus and firewall, we've seen so many times where companies have been reliant on this and they've still been hit with ransomware and been down for weeks at a time. So one of the things that we like to provide our customers are, more modern cybersecurity management. This is all basically centrally managed from our security operations center, where we actually have people monitoring events 24/7, 365. And, we've seen that this has proven to be very successful in keeping attackers out of the systems from our customers. So one of the recommendations that we want to make is, we see a lot of small firms that don't have any kind of cybersecurity team looking over things. We highly recommend that you consider hiring a company like North Star to keep eyes on things and make sure that you're doing all the things necessary to protect the data that you're storing for your clients. Um, and and just because maybe you have an IT person, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing all of these things. And that risk can never be transferred. You can hire somebody like us to reduce the risk, but that risk is yours, and you'll need to choose to have somebody help you protect that accordingly. So it's highly recommended that you have somebody who's highly trained in this. The other thing we want to point out is that regulations are coming, even for attorneys. Attorneys have been very good at making sure other industries have to deal with compliance and regulations, but we're already seeing that CPAs are now falling under FTC safeguards, and I think it's just going to be a matter of time before law firms have their own type of compliance that they're going to have to fall under. And a lot of them are already having to fall under the compliance that their customers have.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, if a law firm does any type of work with federal government or Department of Defense where there's any type of CUI, they would still have to fall into that same regulation. And even at the bare minimum, not necessarily protecting patient health records with HIPAA, but they still fall under the need for business associates agreements, which there is a level of responsibility for cybersecurity, incident response, and reporting.
Cool. And oh yeah, we had a question come through on budgeting for cybersecurity, and this last bullet point here kind of covers that. Most firms, you should expect to spend anywhere from 2 to 5% of your revenue on cybersecurity, IT, and risk management. That's kind of the average that we see in the legal industry. So just want to leave you with a winning cybersecurity strategy. You should definitely hire a cybersecurity firm to help minimize your risk. Make sure that this company has $1 million E&O policy. Also, make sure that all of the things that where you are storing data, that those things are being looked after and monitored. We recommend, for a small firm, have at least $1 million of cyber liability insurance. And, if you are a bigger firm, you're definitely going to want to up those limits also. So make sure that you've got your cyber insurance checklist thoroughly reviewed, and that you have things in place and that you're being accurate on that. Nothing would be worse than wasting money on a cyber insurance policy that's not going to pay you if you ever have to file a claim. And also promote a culture of cybersecurity awareness in your firm. That can go a long way. So you and your staff can either help limit the risk or you can increase it. All right. Any other things, Ken?
No, I mean, I think, in context with the cyber liability insurance and the checklist, I think that that's a key point because on top of being able to create a more secure environment for your firm, it will also allow you to get better, I guess, rates for your cyber liability insurance. And then again, at the same time, increase your chances to be able to get a claim reimbursed. I can't stress that particular bullet enough because it all kind of wraps all of it together, both left and right side of boom.
Yep. All right. So again, thank you for your time today. We just wanted to go over what we're seeing. Oh, I think we have another question here.
If we're not a current customer of an IT company, how long would it take them to help us if we get attacked? So if there is a right or boom situation, how long do you think they don't have?
Yeah. So the thing is, if you don't have a lot of these things in place, it really depends, right? I mean, you got to understand it'll take time just to even get the agreements signed and everything for forensic investigation. But you can call us. We can definitely get the ball rolling if that ever happens. Just understand that it's going to be time consuming and more expensive if you don't have a lot of these things in place ahead of time.
Yeah, because at that point, even if you have or you don't have insurance, right, there needs to be a forensic process as part of incident response, and that will be very costly out of pocket. And then at the same time, if you're not using an IT provider, in order to be able to gather the necessary information, even for somebody to do forensics, is going to take a lot longer because they don't have access to any of your systems. They don't know your passwords. They don't know what software you use. So it's a good idea to get on top of this proactively.
Yep. So feel free to reach out if you would like to book a cyber strategy session. On this call, we'll better understand your firm and help you put a plan in place to reduce your risk. We do this for firms every single day. And we definitely don't want to hear from you after a breach if there's a possibility of hearing from you before that. All right. Any other questions? Looks like we don't. So we will wrap this up. And thank you for your time, everybody.
Thanks, Dan.